I was a teacher for more than 11 years. I was a teacher in schools for children from 6 to 18 years old, and I was a special needs teacher for a while in kindergarten as well. When I don't work, I write books, and I run my own publishing business. I know that it sounds like work as well, although it never feels like work for me. Okay, so then when I really, really don't work, I read books. I love to read, and I perform as an actress on a theater or in video clips, mostly hobby projects until now. Well, I used to be a teacher before. Now, actually, I do spend most of my time as a public speaker and sharing my knowledge and my expertise on the autism spectrum profile. And I, speak on conferences in healthcare, and also since some years in conferences, IT conferences like this one. How did that happen? Okay, so I was actually diagnosed with an autism spectrum profile myself back in 2011. I was 31 years old at the time, and I was really, really struggling with life back then, so I decided to get some professional help. And the psychologist that I went to see on a weekly basis, she taught me, she shared with me some very valuable insights about autism, and she also taught me how to tackle some daily challenges. And maybe most important of all, she is the one that made me focus on my strengths and some gifts and talents that I have, not despite my autism, but thanks to that differently wired brain. So in 2013, kind of the urge grew to share my knowledge and my insights, the insights that I gained with other people on the spectrum and with their friends and families. And I started my own coaching practice for adult people who are on the autism spectrum. Why did I choose to work with people, with adult people with autism? Because back then, 10 years ago in Belgium, there was really a lack of professional helpers working with adult people with autism. It was like if, everybody knew that autism existed, but, you could only have it as a child. So there were only children who have autism, and when you grew up, it would disappear, just like that. The fact is that it doesn't. So when you grow up, you have autism, you are born with autism, you die with it. There's, no, losing it when growing up. So because of the lack of people, professional helpers working with people with adult people with autism, I decided to do it myself, to open a coaching practice, and I was really one of the few. Besides that, I wanted to help people in the workspaces. Like, there are a lot of people with autism that they get misunderstood by their, fellow human beings, and they get fired in the workspace. So, and that's a pity. And I decided to engage myself as a consultant, as an autism consultant in the workspace. In 2014, I met Bart van Loon. He is one of the CEOs in 0 Point. And 0 Point is a company that recruits, motivates, and manages remote teams, your remote IT professionals. And we met on a network event, and the next day I found his email in my mailbox, and he invited me to their office to meet his business partner. I was surprised, but I just went there and we had a meeting, and I was even more surprised when they offered me a job in their company. Like, I was like, what? And he was like, yes, we want you to be our customer relationship manager. And I was like, why? I don't have a background in IT. I'm an autism spectrum specialist, and you don't have people with autism working here, or not that we know of. So what am I going to do here? And he said, like, we believe that working with people with autism can be very similar to working in remote teams. And I didn't figure out back then why that was, but I did in the last years. I decided to go and take the job because I thought that it would be a very nice opportunity for me to learn more about remote teams and to work in that environment, that it would be very good for me professionally. And I started to mix up my expertise, my insights, like the things that I was, the tips and tricks that I was providing in workspaces with people that work with autism. I implemented them in 0 Point, in that environment of remote working. And the other way around, there were a lot of things that I was learning about remote working, and I implemented those in the workspaces that have coworkers with autism, and also that worked. So today I can say that yes, there is a very big similarity, and we can learn a lot from both environments. So first of all, let me explain one of the, first of all, if you go back, please. Another one, back, yeah. Back. Wait. First of all, I want to thank Bart van Loon. He was not only my business partner, but also I learned, very much of him. He is really an expert on remote work. And I learned a lot from the other team members in 0 Point as well, and maybe team members of the management team. And maybe I learned even the most of all the other co-workers at 0 Point, which until today I keep telling about them as my 0 Point family. So very much thank you. But you also might want to read a little bit more from Hassan Osman. He has a website, The Couch Manager, and he has an interesting blog. He wrote some very useful books on virtual teams, and he has a training on Udemy as well, which I think it's very interesting. Thank you. Now, let me tell you only one today, because we only have 30 minutes. Let me tell you about one of the challenges that people on the autism spectrum deal with. People with autism lack theory of mind, And theory of mind, the psychological term of theory of mind means the ability to recognize and understand thoughts, beliefs, desires, and intentions of other people in order to make sense of their behavior and predict what they're going to do next. Okay? So people can read other people, they can read a face, and they can also translate the meaning of body language and tone of voice, okay? A child or an adult with autism does not recognize or understand the cues that indicate the thoughts of, or feelings of the other person at a level that is expected for someone at their age, okay? So that's a big thing. Why is that? According to Professor Albert Mirabian, our communication model looks more or less like this. He claims that 7% of our communication takes place through words, to the words that we use, while 38% goes through tone of voice, and the remaining 55% of our communication take place through body language that we use. So, if you are someone with a lack of theory of mind, who therefore has difficulties reading body language, and who doesn't pick up the subtle differences in tone of voice that other people do here, then all you have left is 7%. All you have left to rely on in communication with other people is 7%, is only the words that people use. Now, can you see that most of the time, that is exactly the case with people working in remote teams. In remote teams, most of the time, people communicate through chat, like Slack or Discord or other tools, or they use written platforms like a wiki for documentation, Git, or tools for project management. It's all written communication. And written communication does not include tone of voice nor body language. So communication among remote teams is challenging because you don't have the benefit of reading facial expressions, body language, and other social cues. This results in an increase of the degree of ambiguity and confusion during collaboration. Consequently, it's important that, to be very specific with your requests or in your communication towards others, and really assume nothing about the person's knowledge on the receiving end. You should actually be 100% clear about your expectations and not leave any requests open to interpretation. Before we go any further, I would like to do a little experiment here. Don't worry, it's not going to hurt. So I'm going to tap a song, and I'm asking you to try and listen very carefully and guess what song it is. Don't worry, it's really not hard. I'm 100% sure that you all know this song, okay? So here it goes. Now, who takes the shot? Who didn't know? Who didn't guess? Please raise your hand, otherwise my experience has nothing. Okay, look around. Please raise your hand again and look around. How many people did not guess this song? Okay, now, sorry, I sometimes forget to ask for the next slide. Yeah, go on. Now, when they did this experiment, 50% of the tappers assumed that their listeners would guess the song. And actually, only 2.5 did guess the songs. So what this teaches us, and before I make that conclusion, I want to share with you that that the number one reason why remote team managers fail is the false assumption that what they communicate is 100% understood and clear to them, to the team. And this is not really only a manager thing, you know, it's a human issue. Like, we all have to deal with this curse of knowledge, which means that we all, what we want to say is clear for us, because it's clear in our heads, but that doesn't mean that it's clear, communicated clearly to the person whom you're talking to. So never, ever assume anything about the person's knowledge on the receiving end, because remember, to assume makes an ass of you and me, okay? So always remember that one. Now, let me share you some tips and tricks to be more specific in your communication with other people. First of all, you have to know what you want before you tell people what you want. That has to be completely clear first, you know? And then you need to communicate not only what you want, but also from whom you want it, how you want it, when you want it, and where. I think we're running out of time, so she's, you know, like, it's okay. So what, from whom, how, when, and where. And there is one more thing that you would like to add, which is, oh, this is an example first. So instead of saying, I need to have a summary update by next week, you could say, I need to have a 500 to 600 word summary update in PDF format by Tuesday, July 16th at 1 p.m. EST. This is much more specific than the first one. Everybody can see that. What is missing? Yeah, by whom? Now, in this case, it's clear because I'm talking to you, okay? So, what is missing? Let's where? Where? Please send it to me through email, or please put it on my desk, or please, you know, when it's remote, the desk is not really there, but please send it to me my email, or send it through, put it in the wiki, or, you know, whatever. You know? So the where was forgotten. And this shows how easily we forget these things. Like, we think that we're clear, we think that, yeah, this is specific enough, you know, but then we realize, like, ah, yeah, okay. So these 5 you would like to check. Then there is another one, and I heard it already. It's the why. And let me tell you about, I don't know, maybe you already know, but there was an experiment in the 70s that they did with the Xerox photocopy machine. You know, back then there were a lot of photocopy machines, and people would stand in line, actually, to make photocopies because, you know, to have a printer at home was really not default back then. So they did an experiment, and they asked, they wanted to know how easy it would be to cut in front, you know, to cut in the line of people waiting. And they used 3 requests with different people and at different times. And the first one was, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I'm in a rush? And the second one was, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine? And the third one was like this, excuse me, I have 5 pages. May I use the Xerox machine because I have to make copies? Now, the compliance rate in the first case was 94%. Obviously, because, you know, people were sympathizing with, you know, with other people being in a rush. The compliance rate of the second one was only 60%. And now in the third case, the compliance rate was 93%, which is almost, you know, the same compliance rate as, you know, as high as in the first one. But there is something particular about the third one. You see, the reason, like, because I have to make copies is ridiculous. Of course, they had to make copies, you know, everybody had to make copies. Why else would they stand there? So this experiment showed us that, you know, to tell people to use the word because increases the influence on what you're asking or what you're saying. So, of course, you don't want to be ridiculous, so you might want to communicate the actual why. You have to know that psychologically, when you communicate about the reason why you ask something, you want something from somebody, people are more likely to follow up or to give you what you want, whether they agree or not, okay? So, thank you. Now, a tool that I would like to share with you today as well is the pyramid of communication, and it looks like this. There are several ways of communication, and they go from more intimate to less intimate, or the other way around. And email is considered the least intimate type of communication because it's mostly a one-way communication. You're not expecting an answer from the receiving end quickly. People can wait 2 or 3 days to reply an email, or maybe even a week, So it's different when we chat. When we use like Messenger or WhatsApp or Slack or other tools to chat, the answer is required or expected more quickly, okay? But through chat, it can happen that somebody, just disappears at once because the connection was bad or because they got interrupted by someone or whatever. We know that, okay? And when we are having a phone call, it's even more different because it's even more intimate, because if the phone call would be interrupted by somebody else, you are not the one who's going to wait, but the other one, because just a minute, I'm on the phone, so the other one is going to wait, the interrupter is going to wait, and the communication will go on. So it's more intimate, and then in video conferencing, you can not only hear each other speak, but you can also see each other. And it's almost, not entirely, but almost as intimate as a communication face-to-face. Now, my experience is that while working, of course, it's a spectrum, okay? So there are no two people with autism that are the same. But most people with autism, when you use a type of communication that is less intimate, it works better for them. So when you see that video conferencing doesn't work, or that a face-to-face conversation doesn't work, just go down. Try the phone, or try chat, or try email, The other way around is the same thing. Do whatever works. That's actually the message. In remote teams, you want to do 2 things. First of all, you want to mix. The more, the better. And you want to move up. So instead of moving down, in remote teams, you want to move up. When you see that communication gets stuck in chat, just ask if you could video conf and maybe even share screens and stuff, okay? So mix and move up. Especially when you notice that communication is not going smooth as you would like, or that team members don't execute according plan, or you can see that there is a kind of confusion or some frustration. Okay. The sign of a timeout has come. I wanted to share another tip with you, but we're going to round up this talk. One more thing. Please note that I am talking about an autism spectrum profile instead of an autism spectrum disorder. Why do I do that? Because I believe that the quote, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change, is right. Autism is not about a disorder. It is about a differently wired brain. And yes, it's true that living with autism comes with some challenges, and even daily struggles. But at the same time, that differently wired brain comes with some strengths and gifts and talents as well. I have a 2-hour talk about those gifts and talents. We don't have the time to dig into those right now, but I might send an abstract for the topic next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you have a couple of questions. Oh. Okay. Just keep in mind we have very little time, so try to be quick with the answers, all right? So how do you avoid coming off as micromanaging when giving very specific instructions? The example left micromanaging to me, someone said.
What you mean is that to be specific is the same as micromanaging?
It seems like that, yes.
It seems like that. And managing is indeed something that, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's true. But it doesn't mean that you have to do this with everybody you meet in the workspace. These are tips and tricks that you use when you see that it would work better with one or the other. You know, there is no one fits all. We are all different, and and the trick is, you're most sympathetic when you adapt your communication to the style that the other one is, capable of processing. So this is not a one-fits-all, to be clear, but just use these tips and tricks to try out if you see that communication gets stuck.
All right, thank you. And the next question says, in a conversation, does it feel at all different if I speak in an aggressive or a pacific, calm voice?
I didn't understand that. Can I?
Yeah, so I'll repeat. In a conversation, does it feel at all different if I speak in an aggressive or a pacific, calm voice? So maybe conversation in a text way, maybe. I don't know. Yeah?
If I may clarify, you said that often people on the spectrum have difficulties hearing tone of voice.
Yes.
Theory of mind context.
Yeah.
And how is this perceived? If
yes.
I speak in an aggressive way or I speak in
exactly.
a calm way, how is the perception?
Yes, exactly. I was a teacher for children with autism, and sometimes they didn't even, they wouldn't hear the difference between, can you close the door, or can you close the door? Like they really didn't hear the difference. It's weird, but it exists. There are people that they don't hear the difference in between those. So you want to.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we run out of time. Feel free to approach Miriam and talk more about it, because you feel